Go. So I didn't know what Pastor Joe was going to talk about, but I thought it's actually quite relevant to what I would like to talk to you about. Um, you may have been thinking throughout this week that you guys are talking about all this agriculture stuff and this farming stuff, and you're like James, and you say, "I'm a city boy." What's this got to do with me? That's not what I'm going to do. But as Pastor Joe mentioned, there is a relationship between some of these principles that we learn in agriculture and tending the ground that apply directly to other areas of life, including business. And my career has been much more on the business side. So I don't want to so much give you a lecture this morning. What I'd like to have is, well, maybe we could call it more of a fireside chat. Just a little bit about how some of these principles, all of these principles really, relate to all areas of life. Now, you'll recall when I did the devotional the other day, I talked about how you have runway. You're moving down a runway, right? And at the end of that runway, you have to launch. You have to take off, and that's a metaphor for your career taking off. And you have a certain amount of time. Hey, John, how you feeling? You want a Tylenol or something? Okay, all right. Good to see you. So you have a certain amount of time, and then your career has to launch to get over those trees. And if you are kind of meandering a little bit this way, and then you're going a little bit that way, you're not going to get the acceleration, you're not going to get the momentum that you need in order to launch your career. So what we want to do in this week is try to get the wheels pointing towards the end of the runway so that you can get the acceleration you need and that your career will launch. Now, what I want to talk a little bit is about the direction of work. The direction of work. And I'm going to explain what I mean by that. But probably most of you have thought about, what am I going to do when I grow up? Like, right? How many have thought about, what am I going to do when I grow up? How many have decided for sure that you know what you're going to do? Okay? A couple of you, that's good. That's a great thing. But a lot of time, I'm going to suggest to you that the most important thing is not what you do. That is not as important as deciding why you're going to do it, or deciding the direction of your work. Now, I thought it was really interesting yesterday that Mr. Reeser said that it wasn't until he was in his mid to late 30s that he actually figured out what he was going to do with his life. And that is actually very similar to my story as well. I didn't really figure out what I was going to do with my life till I was about 36 years old as well. And I don't think it's absolutely critical. Well, it's not as critical that you figure out exactly what you're going to do as that you figure out why you're going to do it, and that you discover the direction of your life, why you're going to do what you're going to do. And so that's what I want to try to talk about today. Because a lot of times, figuring out what you're going to do, God doesn't show us that until we have come to a conclusion, until He's convicted us about why, until He's convicted us about the direction of our lives. So getting to that can sometimes be a bit of what I'll call a controlled stumble. And that takes me to my next slide, which doesn't have a lot of information on it, but I thought that this kind of was a little bit like me at the start of my career. Life, for me, was a bit of a controlled stumble. And today, I own a corporate training company. But if you had told me when I was in university that I would own a corporate training company, I would have thought you were crazy. Because I was in university a very bad student. And how can a very bad student, run a training company? And it wasn't that I was partying and things like that, but I had some struggles in university. And the struggles sort of related to, I don't know why it didn't come out so much in high school, but in university I was taking economics, and I was having a really hard time absorbing all the material that I needed to absorb within the time frame in which I needed to absorb it. And I can remember I had a lot of anxiety because exams were coming, and you get that butterflies in your stomach, and you think, I'm not ready for this. And it would be late at night, and I was going through a chapter in an economics textbook, and I get to the end of it, and I'd say, I don't even remember what I just read. Have you ever felt that way? I just can't absorb this stuff. It's just not going into my mind. And it created a lot of fear. It created a lot of anxiety for me. It was a very difficult time. Now, as time went on, I learned something about myself. I learned that I was trying to learn in a way that didn't really work for me. For me, I learned I was more of what they call an auditory learner. I could sit there in a lecture and not take any notes at all, and I'd remember more than if I tried to take them. And if I sat by myself all evening trying to study through something, I didn't learn nearly as much as if I got together with some friends and a whiteboard and we kind of talked and things, I would absorb information better in that way. So a lot of my anxiety came from trying to learn in a way that didn't work for me. So I didn't know what I was going to do when I graduated. But the fall before I graduated, I was going to graduate in December. And in October, there was this Bible conference. And I was sort of struggling with whether I should go because I should be studying for my midterms and things like that. But I decided to go. And I ran into a guy there, and he said, hey, did you take marketing in your career? And I said, well, everybody takes marketing in business. So yeah, I took marketing. He goes, next thing I know, I had an interview with Hewlett-Packard, big computer company. I didn't know anything about computers. In fact, I hated computers. I couldn't even type. I was handwriting my essays, right? And next thing I knew, I had a job with Hewlett-Packard before I finished my last exam. So I started with Hewlett-Packard, and I was with them for 7 years. And then for another 3 years as a vice president of sales for a partner of Hewlett-Packard. And in my job, I was dealing with corporations that were going through significant change. They were going through significant change. And I ran into a lot of people that had a lot of anxiety, a lot of fear, because they were being forced to absorb change faster than they could change, because they were trying to consume information about the change they had to make in a way that didn't work with them. And guess what I thought about? My own experience with that, and I felt sorry for them. I felt compassion for them because they had this anxiety with their work. Every day they were coming to work saying, I'm going to lose my job. I'm going to fail. I've been doing things for the same way for 30 years, and now they're telling me to do it differently through technology, and I can't keep up with that. I can't keep up with the rate of change. And I empathized with them because I had gone through my own pain. I remember what Mr. Reeser said to us yesterday. He said that one of the things that got him into the job that he got into was a crisis in his own life. You remember he said his father had ALS, terrible, terrible disease. And I'm not sure exactly what it was, but I think he was saying to the effect that anything can happen. Stuff can happen in life that's most unexpected. And so that led him to a place where he was willing to take a risk. Now, some of you don't want to take risks in life. But I'm going to tell you that you have to take a risk in life. The question is what you're going to risk in, what you're going to put your money in. Are you going to put your money on an employer that you think is going to take care of you for the next 30 years, 40 years in your career? Or are you going to put your trust in God? Now, you can put your trust in God and still work for a big company, absolutely. But don't have this illusion in your mind that working in a stable job for a stable company is risk-free, and that working on your own is more risky. It is more risky in one level. But where true security comes from is not from a large organization. It comes from the Lord. Now, if you want to decide, this is another lecture, so I'm not going to get into this. We talked about this at the Runner Academy, so I'm just going to say this really quickly. Of all the job choices that you could take, they could all be placed on a continuum, okay? And on one end of this continuum is safety. And on the other end of this continuum is freedom. And you got to pick your spot. The more safety you want, the less freedom you're going to have. The more freedom you want, the less safety you're going to have. So pick your spot. But here's why I think Christians should move more to the freedom side. Not so that you can spend your time and money serving yourself, but so that we can glorify God with the opportunities He's given us, but because I believe that we can afford to take risks. Because our God controls all of this, and our God can bring success to our ventures. Our God is one that we can trust in, and I don't think there is such a thing as complete failure. I feel that in my life there's been many things that I would consider failure, but all of them lead to something when the Lord is your God. And so we can afford, Christians more than anyone else, can afford to take risks. Now that's a little bit of a tangent, so I'm going to leave that for a moment. But I got onto that because I said that it was a difficulty in my life that created empathy for other people that were having the same difficulty. It was a difficulty in Mr. Reeser's life that led him to realize that life has risks to it, and I'm just going to jump in with both feet. I'm not exactly sure how that went, but the difficulties that you are facing right now, you say, why is God putting me through this? Why am I going through this? Those things are actually hidden blessings that produce in you empathy, that produce in you care, that produce in you understanding, that God will pull on later on for something else. So my struggles in university with not being able to get information in my mind gave me empathy for people that were struggling to learn things in a way that didn't fit their learning style. And because I had struggled so much, I acquired this ability to make the complex simple. And so that helped me. That helped me a lot in my sales career. Well, after 10 years of selling big computers to corporations, I decided that I wanted to start my own business. I thought, there's got to be, and I'm not sure that my motives were entirely pure for this. In fact, I'm quite sure they weren't. There's got to be money in having your own business and software. Software, that's got to be where it is. So I started a software company with 4 other Christian, I'll put that in quotes, some of them were great Christian men, with 4 other Christians. I started this software company, and it failed. After 12 years, one of my partners got extremely sick, almost died. Another one of them kind of went his own direction and did his own thing, and everybody else, the other 2, just left. And I was left with debt. I was left with unfulfilled contracts and customers that had expectations, and I was left holding the bag. And it was a difficult, probably one of the more difficult times in life. And I went and I visited an old, successful businessman who was a believer, and I don't know what I expected, but he said one thing to me, and I've never forgotten it. He said, just show up every day. He said 90% of success is just showing up every day. Don't try to solve the whole problem sitting here today. Just show up. That sort of incremental, you just show up. When some of you have been working on that chipper out there, the chipper? And I don't know if you think it's amazing, but you have these big piles of trees, these great big branches. And the next thing you know, on the other side of the chipper is a nice pile of mulch. And if you were to try to take a tree and just pulverize it into mulch, that would take an infinite amount of energy to do that. But a chipper just takes a chip at a time. And then it takes lots of them really, really fast. And the next thing you know, it reduces a huge problem into something that's manageable. And that's the way you have to take life. You can't sit here and try to solve problems 10 years from now that you can't possibly face. You just have to take it a day at a time. So what we want to do is set your wheels in the right direction and then just do it, just show up every day. But you got to get up to show up, right? You got to get out of bed. Some of you are wasting your summer. Some of you are sleeping in half the day, playing video games the other half of the day, and staying up half the night watching Netflix movies. You're wasting your time. You're wasting your time. You've got to show up, and you've got to get up to show up. So anyway, back to my failed business. 6 months after I was left on my own, the company was closed, no more debts, the contracts were all resolved, and I closed that chapter on my life. But what was I going to do? I was 36. I had 4 kids. I had to do something, and I didn't know what to do. So I thought about the things that I had learned in my life, and I remembered my own anxiety with trying to learn things in a way that didn't work for me, and facing the fears of business. And I thought about what I had enjoyed the most in leading salespeople, and that was helping people, helping them to learn in a way that worked for them, helping people to learn in the way that they learned. And I felt that so much training in a classroom, you learn, but then you forgot. And so I thought, maybe I can bring software together with learning and create online learning for people, cool, animated, interesting online learning for people. But I was afraid. I was afraid to start because I didn't want to fail again. I didn't want to take another risk. You can take me to my next slide there, Ryan. So I was reading the Bible, and I was reading through the Bible, and I came to a verse in Isaiah 50 in verse 7. And it says, "For the Lord God will help me, therefore I will not be disgraced. Therefore, I have set my face like a flint, and I know I will not be ashamed." I said, I'm going to start a company, I'm going to call it Flint. To be flint-faced is to have resolve. It's not to keep caving in and being afraid. You have resolve. And I could have a flint face because I had a promise. Now, it's not that I haven't had failures, it isn't that I haven't had difficulties, or isn't that there hasn't been problems, but that was in 2004, and I have a company, and 2 years ago, Mr. Peterson and his wife, Mr. Peterson's been the cooks in the kitchen. They bought into the company, and they have been working together with my wife and I and about 25 other employees. And that is sort of how I got into that. So the Lord uses our pains, He uses our struggles, but the key is that the direction of our life be right. Now, I would say that the reason behind my controlled stumble, part of it is that's because that's how the Lord works with that, but part of it is because I had mixed motives about the direction of my work. I had mixed motives about the direction of my work, and I sent mixed signals to partners, to employees, to customers, and to the people outside the business, and hurt people through my mixed motives, because my strong overriding motive was to glorify God, was to bring glory to God and rest to people, relief to people, to help people that felt that anxiety that I had felt. That was my primary motive. But then there was times that I thought, yeah, it'd be so good to have money, it'd be so good to have freedom to escape all this and to be able to just do my own thing and not have to worry about this anymore, not have to show up anymore. And so sometimes I'd show that face. And even if you don't say it, people can see it. Sometimes I'd show, I just want to escape. Sometimes I would show, I just want to be ambitious and get somewhere and do something for me. And then sometimes I would show, no, this is really about the glory of God. And this is really about bringing rest to His people and rest to other people. And so it was a controlled stumble because of a mixed messages, mixed direction. That's why we want you to get the wheels straight. We want you to understand the purpose of work. And all the things that Pastor Joe said about how our obedience to God, the land responds to that, the same is true in business. When your motives and your heart are right, then God comes and supports you in so many ways. It's not saying that you are going to be rich, but God brings success in so many other ways. I'm going to talk about that in a bit. And it's not that you won't get wealth. You might. But you will understand that that wealth is not about you. It's so that you can bring rest to other people. So that's a little bit about my story. What's my next slide? Yeah. So I want to turn to the scriptures and get some insight on how you can have the same job but different direction. The same job but different directions, and the outcome that those two different directions will produce. Okay? So I want to talk about two people that had the same job in the Bible. Exact same job, but different directions. Okay, so they are a guy by the name of Tubal-Cain and Bezalel. Who's heard of Tubal-Cain? All right, a few of you. Who's heard of Bezalel? Okay, less of you. All right, that's great. So now I got something to teach you. So these guys had the same work, different directions, different outcomes. They were both craftsmen. So we're going to read about them now. So if we go to our next slide, we read about Bezalel in Exodus 31. I'm going to read it to you. The Lord said to Moses, "See, I have called by name Bezalel, the son of Youre, the son of Hur, of the tribe of Judah. And I have filled him with the Spirit of God, with ability and intelligence, with knowledge and all craftsmanship, to devise artistic designs, to work in gold, silver, and bronze, and cutting stones, for setting, and in carving wood, to work in every craft. And behold, I have appointed him with Aholiab, the son of Ahisamach, of the tribe of Dan, and I have given to all able men ability that they may make all that I have commanded you, the tent of meeting, and the ark of the testimony, and the mercy seat that is on it, and so on." So Moses had been up on the mountain, and he gets all these instructions. You got to make this way. You got to have this dimension. This guy's big, and you think, well, okay, it's pretty clear. God told him what to do it. But knowing what to do and knowing how to do it are two very different things. And so God supplies a man who has natural skill and ability, and God inspires him to create the furniture and the things for the tabernacle of God that is going to make it possible for God to dwell among his people as they journey through the wilderness to the promised land. And so the direction of Bezalel's work was to glorify God in the beautiful things he made that would make it possible for God to live among his people, and that the people would be blessed and protected and provided for by the presence of God among them. That was the direction of his career as an artist. And what happened? Now, what happened is he got to work in community with others. Now, I want to just take a little bit of a sidebar here, okay? What makes you love your work? You may not realize this, but what makes you love your work is when you do what you were made to do. You were made in the image of God. You were made in the image of God. God, among other things, is relational. God said, "Let us make man in our own image." The Trinity was in perfect relationship from a past eternity and in creation. And God desired to walk with his creation in the cool of the day. God is a relational God, so you are a relational being. And you will have joy when you combine your efforts with other like-minded people who have the same direction. That will give you the greatest joy. Look, how many of you would want to come to Faith and Farm next week if we said you're going to be all by yourself? You can make yourself some food in the kitchen. You can sleep in this big old place by yourself. And you can, don't hurt yourself on the chipper. And if you break your hand, you'll have to figure things out. How many are going to sign up for that? You're not going to sign up for that. You're going to say, I'll stay home. I want to be with everybody. I want to be with my buddies. I want to mix it up with other people because we're relational beings. And when the direction of your life is going to attract certain types of people. If the direction of your life is wrong, you're going to attract the wrong people or no people. And if the direction of your life is right, it's going to attract the right people, and you're going to be able to combine your efforts with people you love and you love to work with, and you're going to enjoy the work that you do. There was a period of time in my life when I thought, employees are such a pain such a pain. I remember preaching here, so. I want to have a coin-op car wash. That's what I want to have, because they don't talk back. People just put quarters in them, and you come and collect the quarters. I don't have to talk to anybody. I don't have to deal with anybody. All I got to do is get quarters out of this thing. And God didn't let me do that, because God knows me far better than I know myself, and He knows that I'm a relational being. Now, if you want to have a coin-op car wash, that's fine, but there's got to be a relational aspect to your work. And God knew that I knew that God had called me to mix it up with people. That's what my heart craves. So when Bezalel got the direction right, God brought into his life people that made his work rich. Okay, let's talk about our other guy. Let's go to the next one. That's our one craftsman, Bezalel. Now let's talk about Tubal-Cain. Tubal-Cain was a great-great-grandson of Cain. He has actually the son of a guy by the name of Lamech. And so I've missed verses here. I'm not trying to leave scriptures out, but I just don't have time to read them all. So I've just read a couple of highlights from Genesis 4. It says, Then Cain went away from the presence of the Lord and settled in the land of Nod, east of Eden. That's verse 16. Then you go to verse 19, and it says, And Lamech, who is a grandson of Cain, it says, And Lamech took 2 wives. The name of the one was Ada, and the name of the other was Zillah. Zillah also bore Tubal-Cain. He was a forger of all instruments of bronze and iron, just like Bezalel. Now, here's the type of guy Lamech was. 23. Lamech said to his wives, Ada and Zillah, hear my voice, you wives of Lamech. Listen to what I say. I have killed a man for wounding me, and a young man for striking me. Oh, good for you, dear. I'm just wondering what the response to that would have been. So he was quite a guy. But what was happening here is that Cain was wandering away from God. Having killed his brother, he wanders away from God. And he's living in the land of Nod, which means to wander. And he's finding the vacuum, the emptiness of living apart from God. And he takes these 2 wives, and born to one of them is Tubal-Cain. And what is the direction of Tubal-Cain's craftsmanship? It doesn't specifically tell us, but what it does tell us, but what we do see here, is him putting his work to the futility of trying to find satisfaction wandering from God. To distract himself in the futility of a life lived apart from God. And what are the relationships that draws? What's the environment he worked in? Bezalel worked in an environment with like-minded people enjoying like-minded work. Well, he's living in a place where you cross someone, you get killed. Acrimonious, difficult environment where it's all survival of the fittest, where his dad will kill a person for crossing him. So that's what the direction of his life produced. So if we look to just a synthesis of those 2 things, look at our next slide. Direction and outcome. Here's Bezalel's work. Direction. He found meaning in applying his talent to the tabernacle where God would live with his people through their wilderness journey. What did that do for the relation? He was made in the image of God. He desired relationship. What did that do for the relationships? He worked in community with other like-skilled people toward a great goal that was bigger than themselves and was for the glory of God and for the blessing of God's people. That's the importance of the direction in your life. What about Tubal-Cain? Direction. He searched for the meaning in applying his talent to the futility of a life wandering from God. And what did that do for the relationships? A dog-eat-dog environment where crossing someone could cost you your life. That is the importance of the direction. Get the direction right. Don't worry so much about what it is. It's important. But worry about the direction. Worry about why. And then God will show you the what. Okay, next slide. I'm going to take a quick time check here. Okay. I want to show you this. I want to show you where this is found, another place where this is found in Scripture, where the importance of the direction in life. I want to talk about 3 ways that you can approach the direction of your life. 2 hands, 1 hand, or no hands. 2 hands full, 1 hand full, both hands empty. I want to explain that. You're going to say, what is he talking about? It's here. It's in Ecclesiastes chapter 4, 4-9. Let's read it. Then I saw that all toil and all skill in work come from a man's envy of his neighbor. This also is vanity and a striving after wind, not the wind that Joe was talking about earlier. The fool folds his hands and eats his own flesh. Better is a handful of quietness than 2 hands full of toil and a striving after wind. Again, I saw vanity under the sun, one person who has no other, either son or brother, yet there is no end to all his toil, and his eyes are never satisfied with riches, so that he never asks, for whom am I toiling and depriving myself of pleasure? This also is vanity and an unhappy business. 2 are better than 1, because they have a good reward for their toil. For if they fall, one will lift up his fellow. But woe to him who is alone when he falls and has not another to lift him up. Again, if 2 lie together, they keep warm. But how can one keep warm alone? And though a man might prevail against one who is alone, 2 will withstand him. A 3-fold cord is not quickly broken. I'm going to wrap up by talking about 2 hands full, both hands empty, and 1 hand full. Okay, let's go to our next slide, and I'll unpack this. Remember what it said about having 2 hands full, but what it gives you is just toil. 2 hands full is a picture of a person that says, my career is about me. I want status. Remember what it said there about Solomon, or the preacher, is saying, I looked at it, and people do their work just out of envy for their neighbor, just because they want their work to be a status symbol. I want to be wealthy because I want people to recognize how well I've done and praise me, give me praise, serve me with their praise. And I don't want to have to do anything for anyone else. I just want to live on the golf course. I just want to live on some island paradise somewhere and not have to serve anyone else. I saw you smiling there, James. That's what I want to do. Why? Because I don't want to serve. I want to be served. I want to be validated by you telling me how good I am. I want to be validated by you seeing the symbols of wealth and success in my life, and I don't want to have to serve you. I just want to live for me. And you know what you get for that? You pierce yourself through with many sorrows, as we have in the Scripture. For the love of money is a root of all evil, and through it, people have pierced themselves through with many sorrows. And when you go with that direction in life, you will bring sorrow upon sorrow into your life. And you know what that will do to that relational part of you that is there because you're created in the image of God? You will drive people away. And you will drive yourself into isolation. People that are like that don't have good friends. They have people that are friends to them because they want to benefit from their wealth, but deep, meaningful relationships elude them. Remember the story, A Christmas Carol? Remember Ebenezer Scrooge? Remember when he talks to the ghost of the Christmas past, and that woman that he loved so much, and he drove her away out of his passion for wealth and to gain? That's what happens if this is the direction of your life. You say, oh, I didn't want to have to give up on being wealthy. Look, This often doesn't produce wealth. In fact, the times in my life when I pursued wealth, it evaded me. But the times when I took my eyes off of that and looked at how can I bring rest and relief to others, and how can I direct those resources to their blessing and benefit, then God often provides. Not always, but often that's when he starts to provide it. So 2 hands full is, I want people to see me as a successful. I want the clothes, the watch, the car, the house, the fancy vacations. I want it all. And I want people to know I have it. And if I can't get it, I'll fake it till I make it. If you continue to do it, it will fill your life with toil and anxiety. You will drive friends away from you. You will drive companionships away from, and you will drive your children away and your spouse. That's what that direction does. Be careful. If you think that's a good direction, be careful. Change the direction of the wheels, because that's not going to get you where you want to go. I'm telling you right now, it's not going to get you where you want to go. The relational impact, so the direction is seek wealth and status, you being served. The relational impact is isolation. Let's go to our next slide. Both hands empty. Yeah, I don't want to do that. I've seen these people, and that's just a waste. Works just, there's no point to it. There's no point. It's just, I just want to have fun. I just want to party. I just want to have a good old time. Or I'm afraid to fail. I'm not going to go and do that because I'm afraid of failure. It's so boring. I'm looking for something that I love doing. Let me tell you about what I'm going to do someday. Let me tell you about my plans. I tell you how many times I've heard that. Let me tell you about this get-rich-quick scheme that I've come up with. That's folding your hands. That's empty hands. That's not putting out effort in a right direction. That's retreating from work. Or you could even spiritualize and say, I'm just waiting for the Lord to come. I'm just waiting for him to take me out of here. I'm pretty spiritual. I'm going to let others provide for me while I preach and counsel others. You know, that is both hands empty. Direction, escape, take no risk. You yourself are seeking to be served. Rather than going out, remember what the Lord said to the person who said, you know, Lord, I know you gave me this talent, but I buried it in the ground because I was afraid of you, that you were, that you reap where you haven't sown and you gather where you haven't scattered seeds. So I just hid your talent in the ground. I didn't do anything with it. That's both hands empty. And that will lead to isolation as well and sorrow in your life. That's both hands empty. That's the wrong direction. Are you on that direction? Some of you are on that direction this summer. You think, well, when I get a job, then I'll start getting up in the morning. When I get a job, then I'll stop wasting my time in a virtual world. You won't, because the pattern that you're setting for your life right now is going to sustain until some crisis changes it. And you don't want to court a crisis. If you're not getting up in the morning, if you're not looking for what you see, I want to do things. Do you have any idea how many resumes I've sent out there? Do you have any idea how many places I've gone to looking for work? Well, start a hobby. Do something. Look at someone you can help. It isn't just about money. You've got to use your time wisely, or this is the direction you're going to go down. Endless planning for what you think you're going to do down the road, but no execution. All right, let's talk about one hand full. I pursue my work with diligence for the glory of God, while leaving room in my heart for companionship and community. On one hand, I'm pursuing rest and for other people and relief for other people and provision, but then I have an arm open to embrace my family, my friends, those in need, my church, and I have this balance, this work-rest balance. And so I pursue quietness. I don't always try to say, I need people to see me. Everybody, look at what I've done. I don't need that. I can work quietly and diligently for the glory of God. And when if God gives me an audience at some point in my life, that's great, but I don't have to have thousands of virtual friends and people hearing my opinion constantly before I'm ready to give an opinion. I just seek to work quietly and let God bring me. It says in the scriptures, a man, it's true of a woman too, a man's gift makes room for him. And so many people want to get out in front of everything. I'm having a mental gap from our friend from Redeemer. Doug? Doug, yeah. Professor Doug talked about that, didn't he? He talked about how we always want to get out, and sometimes we live in a world where people want to be seen so quickly, so early in their lives. So instead of that, I pursue my work with diligence for the glory of God while leaving room in my heart for companionship and community. The direction I seek God's glory and take risks to bring rest to others. That's you not seeking to be served. That's you seeking to be a servant. And the relational impact, companionship and community. That's what Bezalel found. What's my last slide here? I want to end with this. I talked to you before about, I've been reading up a little bit on Michael Faraday, a fascinating man, the father of electricity, a born-again believer who loved the Lord with all his heart, a person that invented the electric motor, a person that invented the generator, and a person that discovered benzene, a person that discovered electrolysis, a person whose picture Einstein had in his study. He was so impressed with this person. A person that had no education, no formal education, a person that came from a poverty-stricken family, but a person that did more for experimental science than probably anyone else, than almost anyone else, if you read up on him. And this is what he said, and I want to end with this. He said, no man in the history, or this isn't what he said, this is what was said about him. No man in the history of science has been referred to as humble more often than Faraday. His true humility lay in a profound consciousness of his debt to his Creator. The interesting thing about this position was that Faraday insisted on the primacy of faith. The world was intelligible, beautiful, and adapted to the needs of mankind because God was rational and good. I want you to notice two things: his debt to his Creator and his conviction that God was rational and good. All failure in my life, all failure in your life, all failure in everyone's life stems from an unbelief of the goodness in the heart of God for his creation. That's where it comes from. When you are convicted of the goodness of God, you will stop being afraid to embrace the working world. And you will see that what God has placed there is not this harsh enemy in nature, but something that is there for us to discover. And when we seek to direct our lives to the tilling of the land and to working in a way that is consistent with God's nature, we see the goodness of God. But the other thing here is he felt his debt to his Creator. Do you feel your debt to your Creator? The scripture says, we thus judge that if one died for all, then all were dead. And that he died for all, that they which live should no longer live unto themselves, but for him who died for them and rose again. Do you realize the price that has been paid for you? Do you realize what God gave to you when he gave his Son? Do you realize what it meant to the Father to watch his Son hanging on the cross, bearing your sin? If you realize what has been done for you, it will be a small thing for you to lay down your life, the rest of your life, for him. So may God grant you the courage and the wisdom to set the direction of your life for the glory of God and for bringing rest and relief to a tired, sad, weary world. And the Lord will show you in time what you should do and bring great blessing to your lives.